Hey, he's Jude Allume. I'm Wil Masisak, and you have tuned into the first episode of Old School, New School. we can fist bump on camera. What's happening, man? So, Jude, it's NFL football season because it's always NFL football season. And we decided we're going to, two guys that couldn't agree on much, so we're going to get together and not agree about, we're probably going to get together and agree about everything, but that's another story. But for this first episode, we timed it just perfectly between the AFC and NFC championship games and the Super Bowl and the Senior Bowl and the draft is coming, the kinds of things we're going to talk about here. So I'm going to start with you, Jude. Tell us why you're here, who you are, and why we should care.
Well, football it's been a great part of my life. So whenever the opportunity comes about to talk ball, of course, I'm all for it. Just so happens, got a little bit of a journalism background, and yeah, who doesn't like talking football? Especially with this guy here, this handsome young man.
Wait, me, I'm just, I'm not as good looking. I'm old, and I'm still playing football for some reason at my age, at my advanced age, or 74.
At a high level, football.
Yeah, at a high level, right. Very high level touch football on Sunday. But that doesn't qualify me to talk about football, but having a host of opinions, many of which are unpopular, are a good reason to be here talking about football, as I have for a long time. You might know me from my SteelerFury Steelers podcast. Those of you who joined us, thank you for being here. And Jude, let me ask you this. Give me your hottest take about the NFL that you think most people will not agree with.
That most people will not agree with? I don't know if it's that hot, but actually it might be a popular opinion at this point. But, you don't need a great defense to win a championship anymore. Look at what the Chiefs are doing. They have just good enough defense and suffocating offense, and that's an unstoppable combination right now.
I can tell you my unpopular take that most people don't agree with is that quarterback wins actually matter. That having a quarterback who can figure out ways to win that isn't necessarily the most talented or the best thrower or whatever, best fantasy football guy, is still the difference between winning and losing more often than not. There's my hot take. There you go. There's my hot take.
That's your hot take.
Speaking of the Chiefs, let's talk about the Bills and Chiefs game from Sunday. You said the Chiefs have figured out a way to win without defense, and although you look at the Chiefs' offense and think maybe they could win without the defense, I thought actually the Chiefs' ability to play man-to-man defense against the Bills was the difference in that game.
Yeah, this was probably their best defensive performance I've seen all year. That being said, they still allowed the Bills to move up and down the field. It's just when it mattered most in the red zone, they really showed up. They made them settle for 3 points. And when you're playing the Chiefs, that's a team that's going to get 6 points every time. You can't be taking field goals when they're when they're scoring touchdowns. And we saw that at the end. We kind of have to put the onus on the head coach there, Sean McDermott, a little bit, where all those times you made it into the red zone, one of those times you had to be able to say, you know what, we're down. We're playing the Chiefs, and they're scoring at will on us right now. Let's not settle for the 3. Let's go for it. But that didn't happen, and, they just never were able to build that momentum and, put up the points on the scoring board.
Yeah, we could talk about it a little bit more. We get to the NFC game, but yeah, this idea that from coaches that if they suddenly they get in the playoffs and they become totally risk averse, like they're not willing to take any chances when they get down there on fourth down. To me, it's like it's not believing in your team. Like when you're on the team and your coach does that, the coach is basically saying, hey, not only not trust you to get a yard, we don't trust the defense to stop them if we don't get a yard, and in a way that's so counterintuitive, like. If you be aggressive and fail, give your team a chance to come back from mistakes.
I agree with that. And And just again, to emphasize, this is the Chiefs. This is the defending Super Bowl champion. I mean, you just can't put yourself in a position where it's like, I can't take this chance. I've got to play it safe. That's not how you're going to beat them. That's not how you're going to win. That's not how you're going to contain Patrick Mahomes. You have a great offense. We saw the Bills take that next step with Josh Allen as their QB. He took that next step, and he's a playmaker himself. You got to give him every opportunity you can to, put your team in a position to win. Even when the Bills were up 9-0, you're looking at the Chiefs, and there's no panic in them. They're comfortable, and they just know, like, hey, we're going to get it together. We're going to go put a bunch of points on the board, and these guys won't be able to stop us.
Yeah, I think, you hit the not really, do they not sort of panic? But to me, a great thing about the playoffs every year is that it's a team that's not afraid to make mistakes. And I also think make your mistakes early so that you have a chance later in the game to make up for your mistakes. And it's like the guys who make fewer mistakes later win, whether or not they made mistakes early, if that makes sense. Mecole Hardman botches the punt return, and gives up basically a touchdown to the Bills. But they're feeding him the ball a couple of times to give him a chance to make plays, to make up for it with better plays. But when you're a coach who doesn't go for it on 4th and 1 after you've failed a couple of times earlier to score touchdowns, to me that's the coach not letting you, make the better plays to make up for your mistakes. 2 weeks ago, the Steelers and the Browns kind of like that too. Steelers make a lot of mistakes at the beginning of the game, but then their coach didn't go for it on 4th and short, didn't go for it 4th down from the other team's 35-yard line. It's like you don't give your team a chance to come back from their mistakes, then your mistakes are definitely going to kill you.
Had to squeeze the Steelers.
Yeah, I had to. Just because it's the same coaches. The coach with the Bills did what the Steelers did a couple of weeks ago, what the Packers did, Let's talk about that side for a second. The Packers and the Bucks. Obviously all the talk was about Tom Brady and Tom Brady. But I felt like both Aaron Rodgers and his coach, Matt LaFleur, let this game get away. What was your take?
Yeah, definitely. That's you said it. There was plenty of blame to go around. Some of the names I won't, sit on as, Aaron Jones. You've been a great running back all season, and 2 fumbles when it counts the most. Defensive coordinator, end of the half. You don't have to be a great football mind to know you play prevent. They were going to punt the ball. They came back on the field and said, no, we're going to go for it on 4th and whatever it was, but it wasn't a 4th and short. They're going to throw the ball. They're going to look to burn the clock. You play prevent defense in that scenario. It's unbelievable that they didn't. They end up scoring a touchdown, sucks all the momentum that Green Bay had going into the half, and you come out flat in the second half. But just like you said, Matt LaFleur, Aaron Rodgers, I wouldn't say Aaron Rodgers was risk averse. But I'll definitely say Matt LaFleur was.
I think he definitely is. When he's behind, he tends to play pretty conservatively with the ball. Like that third down that preceded the decision to kick a field goal when they were down by a touchdown. He has pretty much a wide open lane to run, which is something that I think he's inclined to do all the time. But that just seems like a thing you could see the wheels turning in his head in terms of the decision making that you don't usually see with him. Usually it's like, hey, he's got a gap, he goes. But that I think in general he plays a little tighter in those situations. And if you look at his whole career, he's not really good in close games when he's behind. He's not very good once he gets behind to a team that's, with a winning record. And in these playoffs, of course, of his career, he's put up some good numbers, but he hasn't necessarily made the plays to win.
Gotcha. I'm saying he wasn't risk averse in that game. That one particular play, I can say yes, he was thinking about it too much. Where if you're looking at it, you're looking at that play. It's a lot of green grass in front of him. I've seen him do more with less space and opportunity, which is really. It's a play that really had me thinking, like, why wouldn't you take it? Because let's say you don't score, at the very least is going to be 4th and 5 or less. And, I think that's putting it being conservative on that number, because I think there's a really good chance he scores. But it kind of plays into LaFleur's decision at that point, because you didn't go for it, you didn't run it. With Aaron Rodgers didn't run it. So now you've got to go for it on 4th and 13. and he chose to play super conservative, super safe, take the points. That is the safety measure he took that I absolutely cannot agree with, because, I mean, it's 2+ minutes on the clock. You're not down like a field goal. You're not down, 4 points or anything like that. You need 8 points. And you're going up against Tom Brady.
And
your defense hasn't really stopped him all day.
I mean, you know what I'm saying?
And you have Aaron Rodgers. Your defense hasn't stopped you all day. I get it. It's 4th down and you want the points and you're trying to go for the win. But in the red zone, I don't think there's a better situation at the end of the game where it makes more sense to go for it on 4th down. You've got one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Give him a chance to make a play. And at the very least, you can say, I tried everything I could to put my team in a position to win. He just didn't do that. I don't see how you can say, I'm going to take the 3. I'm going to bank on my defense, who hasn't been able to stop Tom Brady all day. And, you live with that. That's going to be a decision that kind of lingers over him for a little while.
The thing I don't understand about this game is they've been feeding Davante Adams for 2 years now. And it's like when Rodgers is in trouble, he looks for him. When they need a spark, they go to him. When they're in the red zone, they go to him. And in this game, they threw to him 3 times in the goal-to-go sequence that preceded kicking the field goal.
But 3 times in a row.
Yeah, but the thing is, against those corners that Tampa has, Carlton Davis has problems, in one-on-one coverage. It just felt like they didn't really force the ball to him the way that they have been known to do for the last couple of years. It's almost as if someone said, hey, it's the playoffs, don't force the ball to Davante Adams. But I felt like that was a matchup that they could have exploited more, and they didn't. Why?
Absolutely. And I'm just that particular series where they did in the red zone 3 times in a row. And I guess Aaron saw that and he just said, you know what, I'm not going to force it into Adams anymore, because there were several guys open on those 3 plays where he tried to squeeze it in there. And it's like he just wasn't looking for anyone but Davante. And then the rest of the game, I guess he saw it on the sideline. He said, I'm not going to let that happen again. And he's not going to his go-to guy. But that's been bread and butter for them all season. So when they needed to do it, they didn't. And when they did do it, it didn't work out for them. I mean, this was just not good for them. Fortunately, though, for Tampa Bay at least, first time in a while that they've even made it to the playoffs, but now they're going back to the Super Bowl, and they're hosting the first time ever the host city. The team will also be in their Super Bowl. That's a nice little accomplishment. Yeah,
it's sort of true. I mean, the 49ers played at Stanford, which is like, almost a home game for them. And the Rams played in Pasadena. That one was like more or less a home game. Not their home stadium is like, okay, sure, we'll give that to them. Hat tip to Tampa, but yeah, it's a good matchup too. I mean, I think I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more next week on the show. But it feels like you've got as everybody wants to say, it's the GOAT and the future GOAT.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of focus is going to be put on the quarterbacks in this matchup. But I think probably the defenses are going to decide this a little bit more. Despite what you said in the beginning about defenses not being necessary.
Defense don't win championships, but defenses that do just enough and help a really good offense, absolutely, they play a factor into the Super Bowl. A la the Chiefs last year, that was not a great defense at all, but when it was the playoffs, they played up a lot. They got pressure. Frank Clark, Chris Jones, they played out of their minds, and they were able to get pressure on opposing quarterbacks. And I think they need to do the same this year, because we've seen it with Brady before. If it's an uncomfortable pocket, if he has to make his read in an expedited manner, he's not the same quarterback. And they just need to be able to get a couple turnovers. And you know what? I feel like this will be a very winnable game for the Chiefs.
Yeah, sitting here today, if you had to pick, what do you like? Preliminary pick without a week to think about it.
I like the Chiefs. If I had to pick, this is not like sitting here and looking at every possible thing I could, but just off the top, I like the Chiefs. Just thinking back to what they did against these guys earlier in the season, you know, a nice little rematch in the Super Bowl, but they had zero answers for Tyreek Hill, and I don't know that they have an answer for him now. If anything, now they're going to be thinking, okay, we can't let Tyreek do that to us again, and maybe they'll try and overcompensate. But now you have a Travis Kelce who's going to be there and catching 10, 11, 12 balls for 150 and a couple touchdowns. And if you take away Kelce too, that's like the games where you have a Demarcus Robinson or Sammy Watkins who just comes out of nowhere and they put up 100+ yards. Even last week with Mecole Hardman, like they have guys, when you take away their main weapons, they have guys who will step up and make you look foolish for doing so. And it's just kind of part of the issue with finding a way to stop or even slow down this Kansas City offense. And then defensively, I feel like they just have enough pieces to kind of counteract all the weapons that the Bucs have on offense. Granted, I think I like the Bucs defense a little bit more than I do this Kansas City defense, but I like the Kansas City offense a lot more than I do the Bucs offense.
Yeah. Well, you're just, I'm reminding you, you're picking against Tom Brady in the Super Bowl.
I am picking against Tom Brady. I am cognizant of that. But hey, you know what? I feel like this is one of those iconic changing of the guards.
Sure.
They're 2-2 against each other, head up. This is the Super Bowl. They're the defending, reigning Super Bowl champions. You have what I think is the best player in the NFL and looks like a once-in-a-lifetime talent with his throwing ability. And I really feel like this is just one of those changing of the guard moments, but it can also just be one of those great Tom Brady against all odds, I'm going to find a way to make it happen stories too. And I'm definitely not looking forward to that.
Well, despite the fact that I'm the old school on the show, I actually, I'm a huge Patrick Mahomes fan. 3 months before the draft, my hot take that no one wanted to agree with me about was I said that Patrick Mahomes was a future Hall of Fame quarterback before he, set foot in the draft, let alone played in the NFL. I just saw that guy for 15 minutes and thought that's what a Hall of Fame quarterback looks like.
Yeah.
And I feel like the Chiefs should win this game because of a lot of the things that you mentioned. Their defense is just able to match up a little bit better against the Bucs offense. And I just feel like the Bucs are going to have problems with those corners. They're just not deep enough at corner to match up all the Kansas City guys. Tampa's linebackers, I like them against Travis Kelce, actually not too bad. And maybe they can package the back end to take away most of Tyreek Hill. But you can't do that and stop the other 2 or 3 guys that they're running out there. So that could be a problem for them. And ultimately, you beat Tom Brady by being a complete team that can do a little bit of everything, just enough on defense, and most of all that you have an offense and a quarterback and a coach who's willing to let you attack them rather than, we got to sit on the football and keep it away from Tom Brady or we're going to lose the game. That gets you beat most of the time. So,
Falcons, definitely can't play like that. You can't play scared against these guys, but I don't think that's an issue for these. But
by the way, the Falcons played scared, but they also threw the ball on the series where they could have put the game away by running it 3 times.
But it wasn't the same. They were a vertical passing offense, and they were, settling for a lot of short routes, little dink and dunks, and it wasn't working for them. You got to be able to recognize at some point we need to go back to doing what was working for us, but it's neither here nor there. Let's actually go back a little bit to the Packers. As a result of the loss, Aaron Rodgers was kind of non-committal on whether he'd be returning to Green Bay. But he also later came back and rebutted and said, you know what, it must be a slow Monday. I just didn't think it. It doesn't mean that I want to go. Which one of these narratives are we running with? Which one is holding more truth?
I think Aaron Rodgers, in some respects, fairly has a giant ego. And I think that his legacy that he would like to leave behind is that he's the best quarterback ever. That's in his mind. I think I'm reading a lot into his words and actions over the time. And so I think part of that is that he wants to be appreciated. He wants his team to come to him and say, hey, we know we drafted a quarterback in the first round last year and we've never drafted you a wide receiver. But we still believe in you and whatever. And to their credit, the response that the team had was either the GM or the owner saying, of course Aaron Rodgers is our quarterback next year. We'd be crazy not to want him to be our quarterback.
Yeah, LaFleur said it.
Yeah. So it's like, hey, that is that's a bit of playing through the press for both of them, I think. But I feel like you have to I don't know, when you're Aaron Rodgers, I think your legacy has to be built on winning stuff. Not fantasy football and MVP trophies. Your legacy is really decided on winning stuff. Yeah, what he's done so far, he's going to the Hall of Fame. People are going to always put him in the top 5, quarterbacks of all time, whatever. But I think football, the game is about winning stuff, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's the ultimate team sport. It's unfortunate, but rings do weigh a lot more than anything else. And unfortunately, playing quarterback, you're going to get judged a lot if you don't have a lot of hardware. Even though it is a team sport, and you need more than just a great arm and a bunch of touchdowns to get to the point where you can win a Super Bowl. I'm sure Aaron Rodgers will tell you that himself, because he's one of those guys who does what he needs to do. Offensively, absolutely no question, one of the greatest quarterbacks I've ever had the opportunity to see. But when the game matters most, it's almost like he's not the same Aaron Rodgers. This is being said, mind you, knowing that he has a Super Bowl trophy, but one just isn't enough to cement a legacy or put yourself in a position that he wants to be, where you're being talked about as one of, if not the greatest quarterback of all time. But to his credit, I will say there's a lot of fairness in his argument. No team drafts a quarterback in the first round and doesn't expect to play them sometime fairly soon. They had plenty of receivers that they could have gotten. They chose not to. And I know Aaron Rodgers had to see that, and he's looking at the writing on the wall. We're counting down your days. You don't know how long.
Jude, he was that guy. He got drafted when Brett Favre was a quarterback there.
Which is why he understands even more what the situation is, which is why even in his interview, even though he's, rebuking, I'm saying I'm not going to be here, he's also said, you know what? I just know it's the nature of the game. It's not often a player gets to play his entire career with one team. And, he's saying that even though he's trying to rebuke the fact that he doesn't want to be there, but he knows there's a great possibility he could be playing elsewhere. The question is whether it's his liking or if the Packers are just willing to part ways with that great of a quarterback.
Yeah, here you are. I got to let that be the last word on that. Do we have time for Deshaun Watson? Because Deshaun Watson will be the evergreen of the offseason. It'll keep going. Should we move on to talk about the Senior Bowl a little bit?
We do have to move on for the Senior Bowl, yeah.
Okay, so let me throw this to you. Most intriguing prospect for you at the Senior Bowl. By the way, for those of you who don't know, Senior Bowl is the biggest offseason event right now for the NFL and the NFL draft. There isn't going to be a real combine. There isn't going to be a lot of all-star games. This is pretty much the main show for the entire offseason. So getting to chance to see players practice and even playing the game on Saturday with all the coaches and staff on hand and maybe doing some interviews down there. Really important thing. Who's your intriguing prospect?
This is a quarterback league, and I'm going to stick with quarterbacks. I like Kellen Mond out of Texas A&M. This guy's a 4-year starter, and let's face it, SEC is still the best. Not the Big East, not the Big Ten, not any other conference. SEC is still the best football in college football. And this is a 4-year starter. That means he is battle tested. And you know what? He comes away from a Texas A&M program with records as the all-time leading passer in yards and touchdowns. He's got great size. This is a great opportunity for him to kind of go out there and show what he's capable of, show that, he's a quarterback that can sustain. And you know what? If you take a chance on him, he can go out there and really make you look like a genius for it.
Right on. Well, I'm going to take it intriguing to a slightly different direction because I'm going to go with someone that most people don't know that much about. He's a defensive lineman from the University of Houston named Peyton Turner. He's like a 6'5", 6'6" guy, 270. He's billed right now as a pass rusher, but I think ultimately in the NFL, what he is a guy that can play all along the defensive line. So if you're a team like New England or Pittsburgh that runs multiple fronts, you have a 3-man front front with where the defensive end is a 5 technique, they're more inside, or you sometimes on passing downs, you kick those guys inside of your edge rushers. He's a guy that got not only great length, but can really use it for both pass rushing, for shedding tacklers in the run game. He's a guy that 2 weeks ago almost nobody knew his name, and I noticed now that in the coverage yesterday that suddenly people are starting to talk about him. And yesterday in drills at the Senior Bowl, I think he started to show people he's got the a lot of ability to both win with power and with getting around the edge, which for a dude that size with long arms is a treat. He's to me, classic 5 tech. Having watched these 3-4 teams over the years, he's your J.J. Watt style player. Maybe not as explosive, but similar kind of build and game.
Gotcha. Go ahead and just give me who you feel like has the most to gain from this game.
Yeah, I actually think even though he's well known and he played at Florida, wide receiver Kadarius Toney has something to gain here. I think he has an opportunity to move into the conversation for the first or second wide receiver taken. I really do. His willingness to come and play at the Senior Bowl. Najee Harris is another guy, the running back from Alabama. Neither of those guys needed to show up here in order to get drafted high. But most people are thinking of Toney as like maybe a top 50 pick, probably a second rounder. I think he's got a chance to be mid-first round with the kind of show that not only is he putting on already this week, but what he can do. So I think he's got a lot to gain. What about you?
I'm going to go back to Alabama. I like Mac Jones. Like, some people are having him as like the 4th or 5th quarterback being taken. This guy's a Heisman finalist. He just led Alabama to a national championship. The knock on him is that, he's more like a system quarterback and he had all these great weapons. I mean, I get it to an extent, but how much can you really fault a guy for having great talent around him? He's a Heisman finalist. He can throw the ball. This is probably the best quarterback that Alabama has had in a while. I feel like he goes out there, he puts on some great practice footage. He shows what he can do in the game. He can help move himself into, that 3rd quarterback or maybe even 2nd quarterback taken. I don't see him overtaking Trevor Lawrence for that top spot, but he can really help move up his draft position if he has a great week.
Well, a quick Mac Jones note. He threw for something like 4,500 yards this year. 3,000 of them were to receivers who were wide open, according to Pro Football Focus. It's like it's so hard to judge him.
Get the ball there still.
No. Listen, I'm not. It's nothing against him. It's just sort of all I'm saying is it's hard to judge anybody on Alabama's offense because it was like they were playing against air 2/3 of the time. So that makes for a tough evaluation. But
it's a rough year to judge a lot of teams in general just because of the schedule and everything going on.
Yeah, with tough year in general to get information for those of us who aren't insiders, to judge anything anyway. But go ahead. Your sleeper prospect before we leave the Senior Bowl.
Sleeper prospect. I'm going to go receiver on this. I'm going to go with the receiver out of UAB, Austin Walker. Put up over 1,000 yards last season, but again, this is a different year. So he'll go under the radar because he only put up something like 500 plus yards. But this is a guy who has great size and he goes up and gets the ball. I'm a little biased to those big receivers who go up and, make those jump ball catches because a lot of times quarterbacks just want to give you that opportunity and you have to prove that you can make the play when that opportunity is given. He has somewhat of a history of doing that. I want to see what he's able to do against, better opponents this week in the Senior Bowl.
All right, I'll make mine. Stick with big. You like it, I like big players, especially for offensive tackle and potentially left tackle in the NFL. It's nice to have some length. I'll give you 2: Deontay Smith from East Carolina and Spencer Brown from the University of Northern Iowa. Neither, much on the radar. Before a couple of weeks ago. Then they start getting the Senior Bowl conversation, and suddenly people are like, they're the best in the class. I don't know about either being best in the class, but I do know that, for instance, a guy like Deontay Smith, a little bit undersized in terms of weight. He's only about 280, 284, I think, which for left tackle in the NFL is, pushing the limits. There's a couple of guys who play around 290. But he's been all conference the last couple of years. He is a guy that is just a dependable edge at blocking edge rushers and gives you enough in the run game, just sort of like really solid feet, technique, movement skills, somebody to watch out for. Spencer Brown, the tackle from the University of Northern Iowa, He's a guy that has barely played the position. He's only been playing tackle for, offensive tackle for, I think, 3 years total. But he's massive. He's, 6'8" and in the mid 330s and has movement skills like a tight end. So when you look at him and his potential, his problem at the Senior Bowl is he literally has not put on pads and played football since November of 2019. So being at an FCS school, he didn't even play all of last season. They didn't practice. They didn't have a spring practice. So from his standpoint, he's like hit the train running at the Senior Bowl. But if he can survive the week, I think he has a chance to be in the top, one of the first 5 tackles taken off the board.
Sounding good. Let's go ahead and wrap up for the people. That's our episode for this week.
Do we really wrap up for the people? I think we do, because we're basically saying, hey, you don't need any more of us talking at you. But in case you do need more of us talking at you, I think we'll be back next week with another edition of Old School, New School. Jude, leave us with a final thought.
Final thought. Catching me off guard here. Let's go back to NFL. I really just want to see what the Chiefs are able to do, because the way that they beat the Bills is kind of somewhat a way that they played. The Bills had no running game, and they were able to just focus in on Josh Allen and force him to be perfect. And, that's a very tall task to ask for anyone facing an NFL defense. But the way that they beat the Bills and forcing them to, forcing that one player to play perfect. They're kind of the same in that they're putting a lot on Patrick Mahomes. That running game has not been there for them in these playoffs so far. They went out and got Le'Veon Bell. I don't know that it's been a good trade for them thus far. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he just hasn't been great due to injury the last couple of games. So I'd love to see if that's something that they kind of pay attention to and fix, or if they're just going to say, hey, you know what, we've got Patrick Mahomes, we don't care. Nonetheless, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage if you're not able to run the ball.
Yeah, good point. I'll add to that for my last point, which is, man, if you have a good team, you can pick up your running backs almost anywhere. One team has a great running back, but they picked up off of waivers. The other basically is starting an undrafted free agent over a guy who was their first round draft pick. So I think it's like you find contributors wherever you can get them, but particularly good teams find a way to get players from anywhere and aren't not necessarily have to draft them in the first round to feel like they can play them at crunch time. So kudos to both those guys. We'll talk more about the Super Bowl next week, and we'll know a lot more about the Senior Bowl and who was thumbs up and who was thumbs down next week on He's New School. I'm Old School. I'll see you next week. I'm Wil Masisak. He's Jude Allume. See you next week.
You got an old school soul, though,
Yes, you're an old soul yourself. You're like a curmudgeon old man.